What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Observant Lineman. I'm your Observant Lineman, Uche Nwaneri, and today we are going to be starting what I like to call the Player's Perspective series. Now, this story is going to be one that's going to take a little bit of time to dive into and to give you the details, but I want to do it justice because this is about the time when I was cut as a player from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, before we start this, please do me a favor. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, please hit the like button. This helps to boost my video on the YouTube algorithm. Very much will be appreciated by me as I continue to bring you guys content that I think that you guys are gonna enjoy. And we continue to build this channel out to be the best that it can possibly be. But let's go ahead and start this story. So this story begins at the very end, actually, of the 2013-2014 season. In Jacksonville, my last year with the Jaguars. This was actually the first year that we played a game in London, and this was also Gus Bradley's first year as head coach, Dave Caldwell's first year as GM, and basically a plethora of coaches who were in their first years in Jacksonville. I think the only head coach, or the only coach that we had that actually was a holdover from the previous season was our wide receivers coach. I forget his name, this was basically my first year with Gus Bradley and a brand new coaching staff. And our offensive line coach was a guy by the name of George Jarno. Now, George Jarno had been a former player in the NFL and had coached the offensive lines of the Tampa Bay Bucks and the Detroit Lions before coming to Jacksonville. Needless to say, it was a rough year for our offensive line that year. We had a ton of issues in terms of communications. Everything that had to do with the blocking and protecting for the offense was very convoluted, and guys just weren't on the same page. But that's neither here nor there. At the end of the year, what happens is you have an exit interview. I'm sure most of you have heard about the exit interviews that players have. Now, with us on our offensive line at this particular time, it was a bit of a transition that was about to start because our longtime leader on the offensive line, Brad Meester, had just finished his 14th season, had just announced that he was retiring. And so we knew that, we were going to be having somewhat of a void, that our offensive line was going to need to have players step up. For all of us that were veterans on that offensive line, there was going to be a void that was going to need to be filled. And me, I was now the oldest guy on the line. So I felt like, obviously, I needed to step up and be that leader for the line. I needed to, demonstrate that I was ready to take that step to our coaches. And in our exit interview, I went and spoke with George Jarno. Coach Jarno is one of those coaches from the old school. I felt like me and him had gotten along pretty well throughout the course of the season. Can't say the same for some other guys on the offensive line. But as far as I was concerned, I felt like we had a pretty good understanding of one another, and we were pretty mutual. We had a mutual respect, and I liked him. I liked Coach Jarno. I thought that his scheme was terrible. I thought that his scheme and how he set up for the offensive line to block was unconventional and very off-putting for a lot of guys on the line because of just things that we had been taught and coached to do for the 6 years prior to him coming in. But I still had an amount of respect for him and an amount of decorum with him that, I felt we were on good terms. And so when I went into this meeting with Coach Jarno, he asked me how I felt about the season. I was honest with him completely. And I told him that I felt like it was a bad season. I felt like there was a lack of communication. There was a lack of understanding between the players on the field. I felt like there was convoluted information in film sessions, in our classroom work, basically, what we would call it. I felt like there just wasn't the kind of chemistry and cohesiveness that we needed to build on, the small successes that we were having. And that, held us back through the course of the season. So, in saying this, I said it in the most respectful manner I could. I said it in a way that I felt could be seen as more of just feedback rather than any real criticism. I didn't really criticize anything in terms of how the offense operated from a cost system standpoint. But that in and of itself was a mess the entire year. But I didn't bring that up. And I felt like one of the things that I also conveyed to him immediately after that was that I wanted to be the guy who would be the leader on that offensive line, that I wanted to have that responsibility. I wanted to work with Coach Jarno directly to improve everything about the line, to push guys, to make sure that this next coming season, the 2014-2015 season, that guys would, know what the tempo was going to be set at, and that we would work at that with that bar set as high as possible. And I would hold people accountable, and I'd hold myself accountable to meeting that bar each and every day in workouts. And, at this point, I was looking him directly in the eyes, talking to him about this, and I could see that it was kind of going in one ear and out the other, because he was pissed off at this point because of the critiques that I had made about the season. I think he took that a little bit personally. And look, I'm not going to bash Coach Jarno. Coach Jarno was a good man. Unfortunately, he's passed away at this point. So rest in peace to Coach Jarno. But, let's be real about what happened. I was I felt responsible in how I responded to his questions about what I thought about the season, and he took it personally. And I think from there was a little bit of a disconnect between us, which was weird because we had never had any kind of scenario like that throughout the course of the season. So it didn't make sense to me that he was mad, because we had critiqued things through the season, and we would laugh, and he would agree with some things and he wouldn't agree with others, or he'd explain things in ways that we can understand. And, it just felt like at this point here, he was taking it to a level that it didn't necessarily need to go to. I really felt like coming out of that meeting that he had really gone left. And I guess I didn't think too much of it after the fact. I just kind of felt like that was unnecessary of him to feel like I was in any way trying to talk down on what he had done. And of course, in his response to what I had said, he said that he felt like I wasn't in the best shape that year. He said he felt like, that I could have had a better year. Now, granted, I wasn't in perfect shape that year because I was coming off of a major surgery on my right knee, and I had stem cells injected into my knee. And truth be told, I shouldn't have even played in a single game up until about week 8 or 9, because that is the point in the season when my knees started to actually respond in a way that I could play more in a more comfortable manner and play more like I was used to playing as a player. Because before that, I had literally been compensating because the rehab truly and honestly was not complete on my knee. And I went through 6 months of rehab after having surgery, and I still wasn't ready by the time the season started. But, they put me out there anyways. As we all know, this is how the NFL does. This is the culture of football. As an offensive lineman, they don't care that I'm injured. They don't care that I'm not fully rehabbed. In a time like now in the NFL, where players are a little bit more expressive of protecting their bodies, even more so when they're trying to, rehab from an injury than what you necessarily see out on the field. If it was this time today, I would have sat out the entire season, and I would have just told them I wasn't going to play until I felt like I was 100% ready to play football, because I was honestly not ready to really play football until the second half of the season in a manner that I felt comfortable with. And even with that, I graded out the highest on the offensive line, graded out at the highest marks, still ranked in the top 15 offensive linemen in the league from Pro Football Focus back in 2013. Still graded out positive for the season, which I felt, again, that it wasn't the best season for me. And I felt like having gotten to that point where my leg had finally begun to respond and have the strength that I needed, that the next season was going to be right back to, the level that I was used to playing at, which was Pro Bowl level style play for me. Moving forward, and it's right around March 4th, March 3rd, March 4th, I'm actually here in Atlanta checking up on the business. I'm literally packing up my bags to go into my car to drive back to Jacksonville on Sunday night because I was planning on starting my workouts to start getting ready for the off-season program the next day. So I was going to be back in town with my personal trainer, beginning my workouts, starting to get back into shape. I'm going to my car, throwing bags in, go back upstairs into my house in Atlanta, and I see that I missed a phone call from the Jaguars. So for me, whenever I look and see that I missed a phone call from the Jaguars, especially being in the off season, it's usually, our public relations. They want me to go and, speak at a school. They want me to go and do some community work. And I'm usually down for that if I'm in town. So I decided, hey, let me give them a call back real quick. I'm pretty sure they want me to come in and do something this week. And, I'm fine with that. So as I am walking to my car to get ready to drive back to Jacksonville, I call again and they connect me with Dave Caldwell. So for me, this is awkward. I'm like, why am I talking to Dave Caldwell? What's good? What's going on with the Jaguars where, he's giving me a call. I've talked to him a few times throughout the season, pleasant, but whatever. It's the GM. So that's first red flag for me. After about 5 or 10 seconds on the phone with Dave Caldwell, I understood what was about to happen. I was about to get released. How did I know that? Because, this guy couldn't get it out of his mouth. He was stuttering. He was fumbling over his words. He was trying to find a way to say it. At the end of the day, I felt like he was, a bit cowardly with it. He couldn't, if it's a decision you've made, then, say it. Just pick your nuts up and tell me what you want to tell me. So he stuttered his way through this conversation, telling me that they were going to go in a different direction, that, I had a good season. They felt like I had a good season, but they're wanting to basically get new blood in, and they're wanting to move forward, without me. So, I was numb to it at first because I was like, you realize we don't have any offensive linemen, right? Like all of our linemen are gone. I'm the only vet on the line, and you've got nothing but young players who are trying to find their way, find their path as players in this league. And, I felt like that was just kind of an awkward way to try and release or cut a player. But I also felt like it didn't make sense as to why they were doing it. He never really gave me, other than they wanted to go a different direction. There was never really any kind of, deeper explanation than that. So hung up the phone with Dave Caldwell, and within 2 minutes, my phone rings again, and it is Gus Bradley. At this point, I'm feeling a little bit of that rush, that adrenaline rush, and Gus obviously thanks me for what I've done for the team, thanks me for being, the kind of player I was for the squad, yada, yada, yada. And he said they'd gone back and forth on it, that there had been, long discussions between, offensive line coach, general manager and Gus, and they'd gone back and forth over the past, 3 weeks as to whether or not to keep me. And at the end of the day, Dave made the final decision. And, to that, I thanked Gus Bradley for the opportunity as a player to give me a year to play with them as a new regime with the Jaguars. And, got off the phone. And then right after that, phone rings again. It's Coach Jarno. And this is at this point, this is where, I honestly started to get pissed off.